I would like to call the regular meeting, Municipal Planning Commission, March 8th, 2016, to order. First item on the agenda is the opening prayer and pledge. Mr. Rowe, would you say the prayer for us, please?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for such a wonderful day today with the sun shining and the temperature was just right. And Lord, we just ask you to come into this meeting tonight. And Lord, just bless every commissioner, plan commissioner here today, and all the staff, all the audience, Lord, and that discernment would be put forth on decisions that would be made tonight. Lord, we just ask you to bless this city, to bless all the Board of Commissioners, and I ask you that you give a hedge of protection over the police and fire. And I say this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everyone, please turn on their mics. Thank you.
Madam Chairperson, before you get started, I'd just like to let you know that the mayor wanted to apologize. She may not make it tonight, but she has another function that she has to attend tonight. Thank you.
Yes, Mayor Carroll did text me just a little bit ago and said that she would not be able to be here. Number 2 is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 3, citizens' comments.
Madam Chairperson, there are no citizens' comments tonight.
Thank you. Number 4, approval of the minutes, 4.1, February 16th, 2016 workshop meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
First and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 4.2, February 16th, 2016 regular meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
First and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Number 5, recommendations. 5.1, discuss and or take action on rezoning property located at 2652 Fairview Boulevard from RS40 Residential to CG Commercial General, map 69, parcel 32.00, 1.1 acres, Gary and Glenda Jaworski owners.
Move to
Madam
approve.
Chairperson, that was just a recommendation from the BOC. They have given the city attorney to draw up the permission to draw up the papers. So that's a recommendation from there.
Thank you.
I'm correct on that, right, Larry?
Yes, sir, and those documents have been prepared, and I have emailed them to the city recorder, and I assume they'll be on the agenda for March 17th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 6, bonds. 6.1, Sweetbriar Springs, performance bond to cover the water, road, sewer, drainage, erosion, street sign allowance, and emergency access, $45,000. The Planning Commission reduced the amount on June 14th, 2005. The bond expires April 16th, 2016.
Move to call the bond, April 16th.
Second.
Okay. 6.2, Stuff It In Storage LLC, surety bond to cover amount.
We can vote.
We don't have to vote on bonds, do we?
You do to give me permission to call it.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
all right, thank you. We have a first and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 6.2, Stuff It In Storage LLC, surety bond to cover amount, $55,000. Bond expires April 16, 2016.
Move to call the bond.
Second.
Need to explain something. They have completed everything except for, I think this will have to be reduced to a maintenance bond, and I think, Will, you have a suggestion on how much it'll be reduced to?
Yeah, I'd recommend that you offer 2 options to the bondholder. One being that they can reduce the existing site bond to an amount equal to or greater than $5,000. Alternatively, they can replace the current bond in its entirety with a maintenance bond in the amount of $5,000. Both options are acceptable to the city. Both options offer the same, afford the same protections to the city. Both options would entail a one-year expiration date from the date of the final certificate of occupancy that was issued. That's your standard process in your zoning ordinance, and that would be my recommendation.
Should that decision be made tonight?
Yes, you need to vote to allow, if it's your desire, vote to allow those two options.
Okay, we're going to allow the two options, and then the owners will make the decision and
Correct.
tell the city?
Yes.
They're here now.
Well, that's what I was going to say. They're here now, so should we ask them to come up and ask?
I would not. I would
would
just,
not?
I would just vote to approve those two options, and then they can figure out what would be best for them on how to move forward at
We'll give it
a
time
later
to look
date.
at it, Wood, you know?
Okay.
That'd be good.
Move
Okay.
to approve those two options
Okay.
mentioned. Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 6.3, Walmart site maintenance bond to cover site grading, erosion control, seed and straw mulch, and site reclamation, $390,000. Bond was set at the July 10th, 2012 meeting. Planning Commission reduced the bond to $50,000. Bond expires November 30th, 2015. Owner is requesting bond to be released in accordance with city requirements.
Same situation there, and we'll have a recommendation on that, Madam Chairperson.
I think yes, they have installed everything, and this maintenance bond has met the requirements as far as the time requirements, is my understanding, and I would have no problems releasing that maintenance bond.
Move to release bond.
We have first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Number 7 is old business. There is none.
Let the record show that Mark Lowry was here representing Walmart.
Okay.
Okay.
The record will show that Mark Lowry was present to represent Walmart. Number 8, new business. 8.1, discuss and or take action on preliminary plat for Kyles Creek Phase 2, Section 2, map 47, parcel 32, 14.07 acres, zoned R20, owner Kelly Shiver.
I'd like to recuse myself from taking part in the vote on this.
There are some city staff comments. I can go ahead and read now.
Where's that noise coming from? Somebody have papers over a mic?
Yeah.
Okay.
These are the city staff comments for item 8.1. Number 1, the proposed development plan preliminary plat meets the requirements of the city subdivision regulations and zoning ordinance, with the exception of the variances being requested that are listed on the left side of the plan. All of the requested variances pertain to requirements in the subdivision regulations. Number 2, the next step in the approval process would be the submittal, review, and approval by the PC of the proposed construction plans. Construction plans will be required to meet all city requirements with the exceptions of any development plan variances granted by the Planning Commission. That's all.
Will, do you have any further comment? Move to approve.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Discussion. I have a question. Mr. Shiver, I saw on the plan that there were no sidewalks, so will we be putting money into the sidewalk bank?
I'm not sure. I mean, I hadn't heard, exactly how that unfolds and what that consists of. I'm totally all ears and of course want to, cooperate with whatever's needed.
Okay.
Has this phase ever come before, the planning commission before? Not this one.
I thought
It has,
I thought
yeah,
it
expired.
expired.
Yeah.
I think y'all approved it, then it went way over the expiration date. Marty had.
Was it approved with these variances previously? Do we know?
Actually, the regulations changed from the time of the first approval till now.
Okay.
The
Hence
site,
the variance requests on these 5 variance
Yes, sir.
requests?
And the variance requests are also so that it'll, match it'll conform to the rest of the neighborhood. It's already been built. This is the last phase.
Did you guys do the previous phases? Were you involved in the previous 2 phases?
No, sir.
You're just trying to match what was already existing?
Yes, sir.
Is this a continuation of the same development?
It
Or
is.
is this a new, okay.
Yes, sir.
it is.
It's the last phase and a definite continuation.
Okay.
Will these fall into our most current subdivision regulations less these variance items, like street,
Yes,
lights and everything like that?
yes. Street width, thicknesses of the stone base and asphalt layers would be the same, structurally are the same. Again, like you said, with the exception of the variances that are listed on the plat.
Okay.
Twenty additional lots, is that correct? 20 additional? Do you know how many existing lots are in Cows Creek?
No, sir, I don't. I think the last phase was 20 more, but this is the final 20, the last phase. I'm not sure what the total is. Ms. Anderson, do you know the total of lots in there by chance?
Not offhand.
Another question, Will, this seems in line with what we did with the Phase 2, Section 1 a couple years ago as far as variances go when Mr. Cunningham was up there. I'm having trouble remembering what we did there, but it seems in line with what we did.
Yeah, the Phase 2, Section 1, actually, I want to say it was 2014,
2014?
2013, 14 range.
Okay.
And correct, at that time, that section was afforded the variances that are being requested as a result of it being a continuation of a previously established subdivision.
I have no problem with the variances myself, but the reason we allowed no variances on Phase 2 is because we asked for the paving to be done, and there was an agreement there.
Yeah.
Just,
And this would be, geographically, this will be the last section of this particular subdivision. So we're not facing a situation where there's another 100 acres of undeveloped land, that's connected. So this would be the last scenario where we will have to, or you will have to deliberate for this specific subdivision on these types of variances.
Going back to the sidewalk item that Ms. Anderson brought up, the requirements would be sidewalks on both sides of the street.
That's correct. That's the current requirements in the subdivision regulations as they exist today. Those requirements were not in place when the subdivision first came into existence. And again, none of the variances that are requested will result in any additional immediate or long-term cost to the city. Matter of fact, it'll be less cost because you won't have sidewalks to maintain in your public right-of-way, so.
I think it makes it difficult to grant the variances, because we're trying to stick to that, to the same precedent for everyone. We're trying to go to this, but in this case, being the last phase, I think it's hard to add, in my opinion, to enforce it. Then you would just have 20 lots on the backside would be 25% of the neighborhood or something like that would have it, and none of the rest would have it. And I actually live in this neighborhood, and my wife, I know, would love sidewalks, but.
Yeah.
And I think there's some value to having continuity of those neighborhoods, connect them with, like, to your point, the last phase of it. And if you treat this one a little bit differently, then you do have this unique little interaction with what's already there. So I agree with you. I tend to not have a lot of issue with this one, given the circumstances.
And it's not a large phase either, so it's not like it's, you know,
I think it's gonna be, the 20 lots, whatever it is gonna complete, it's gonna be close to 95 lots to 100 lots in the whole place. Is that about right?
I wish I knew, buddy. I'm not sure.
All right.
I think it's a little less
When I've
than
looked
that.
at
yeah,
it,
it's less than
Less
that.
than that.
It's less than that.
I think it's about 60
75 or 80.
existing lots in there now.
It's about 60 or 70, something like that.
60,
65 in the first phase.
80, 90.
possibly, it's around 60-something.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
8.2, discuss and/or take action on rezoning of property, including preliminary master development plan off Cox Pike from RS40 to R15 CG, mixed-use PUD, residential, commercial general, mixed-use planned unit development, map 43, parcel 30.01 and 31.00, 32.19 acres, Denny Proctor and Welch owners.
I recuse myself from voting on this. I'll take,
Thank you.
There's some comments I'll go ahead and
Yes.
read. City staff comments related to this item 8.2. Number one, it is important to note that the preliminary master development plan that is being submitted as a part of the rezoning application does not include detailed engineering design for the proposed roads, drainage, or grading. All proposed roadways, drainage components, and grading will be required to meet all City of Fairview standards at the time those detailed plans are submitted for review. The detailed engineered design for the site may warrant the necessity to alter the layout of the preliminary master development plan in order for the site to be compliant with all technical design standards for roadways, drainage, and grading. Number two, please note that the layout of the submitted preliminary master development plan is wholly dependent on the applicant receiving TDEC approval for the proposed on-site drip irrigation sanitary sewer system. Number three, the typical lot dimensions are shown on a supporting submittal document. It is recommended that these diagrams be placed directly on the preliminary master development plan. Number four, in addition to the typical lot size diagrams, it is recommended that the minimum lot dimensions be established and included on the typical lot layout diagrams. Number five, the proposed residential density is 2.77 units per acre, which corresponds most closely to an RS-15 base zone density. The RS-15 zone is considered a medium-density residential zone according to the zoning ordinance. The proposed land use plan identifies this area as low-density residential. If the rezoning is approved by the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners, an amendment to the proposed land use plan would need to occur. That's all the comments.
Okay, we have a PowerPoint that's going to be shown. So, Nick, do we need to do anything before we show the PowerPoint? Mr. Cantrell?
No, you can show the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Freimeyer. I'm with Gamble Design Collaborative, a landscape architecture and planning consultant firm. And we put together a few slides that you're going to be seeing here. And basically, I just wanted to highlight a couple of the key components that I feel are very important to this plan. And then open ourselves up for questions, and would really appreciate your feedback and comments as we further. So, and I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with this property. The development's directly across the street from the Polston Place to off Cox Pike. So as was previously mentioned, is currently at R40, and the request tonight is for the RS-15 CG mixed use with the PUD overlay. So what we are proposing, which I do believe is kind of different from this plan, is a diversity of lots. We have 3 lot types that are shown. The 3 lot types are also in your packet. 2 of them are alley loaded, which helps provide further with the diversity of both the size of the lots and the housing type. There is 1 commercial out parcel shown off Cox Pike, and then a large community park shown behind that. So, another kind of important key to this is that we've heard some commentary about concern for street parking. So we are showing a widened asphalt section. So we have 2 clear travel lanes and then additional room for parking. We hope to work with staff to make sure that the roadways and alleys are permitting all the turning movements and everything for emergency access, and understand that. And then again, just highlighting the diversity of the housing types. It's kind of shown on the plan that you have in your packet, and then here again, the 3 lot types, 2 of those being alley loaded, to help add some variety to the community. So, again, my name is Kelly Freimeyer, and I'm here with Bob Hammerline from my office, as well as our engineer and the developer if there are any questions. But again, we're really seeking feedback from you and are here to listen as we further refine the plan, and hoping to receive the rezoning request.
I have a question.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. The detail you showed with the roadway and the parking looked like it facilitated parking on one side of the street. Is that what I saw?
Yeah, that is the intent, to make sure we have 2 clear travel lanes, and then have the additional 8 feet for the parking.
So if people park on both sides, then we're cut down to 1 lane there?
Yeah. As we work through the details of how we want to implement that, it's our intention to make sure it's clear through the community of how we want to handle that. But we are willing to to work with that. We just want to make sure that we are showing the widened asphalt section to allow for.
People are going to tend to park on both sides. If it's available, that's what's really going to happen, I
Yeah.
think.
I think the intent is to to stripe it just like you would to indicate where parking is allowed and where
Yeah.
it's not.
Okay.
So,
I have a question regarding the CG zone.
Here is to provide what would be a parcel for a daycare, but it would be an actual commercial parcel, so that's why it's kind of called out that way. But given the neighborhood across the street and this one and all the development occurring in the area, small commercial opportunities are possible, and the daycare being one that would be a needed asset to the developing communities there.
I definitely don't have an issue with a daycare. Our codes actually allow a daycare to be set up in any of our zoning areas. So this, for that purpose, this wouldn't need to be CG. The other part of it is by zoning it CG, it just opens up a whole potential bag of worms with what, as far as the regulation of the city goes, what is allowed there, which is pretty much anything is allowed in a commercial zone. And I don't know, for that, I just think that kind of brings up a lot of potential issues down the road. So for me on that, I would like to, not necessarily striking it completely, but I would feel uncomfortable giving it that zoning without seeing a final detailed plan of what exactly is going to go there. And I mean, being in a low, in our zoning map, this is low density residential. So again, it just kind of brings up a lot of more questions than I think it should.
Mr. Biada, that very item was discussed at staff review with the applicant. And one of the beauties of the PUD overlay is that even within standard zones, you can dictate the limitations of particular specific commercial uses. And that was expressed to the applicant that if they desired to have any other commercial use other than a daycare or a preschool, that be identified on this preliminary master development plan. Otherwise, by their I guess, classification that is shown on this plan, if it moved forward today as shown, my interpretation and recommendations would be that the only commercial enterprise that it would be approved for by this zoning would be a daycare or a preschool.
Okay.
If they chose or desired, or if the market conditions changed, that they had interest from, or there was interest in other commercial ventures, then that would require a revision to the PUD overlay zone.
Okay.
And that would have to go back through the process of revising the allowed uses within that CG parcel.
Okay. Thank you.
Will, did I hear you correctly? And the PUD overlay with the CG does still somewhat limit what can go there commercially?
Yes, again, by their own identification on the preliminary master development plan, which is a part of the rezoning action, it specifies preschool or daycare clearly in black and white. And that would be, if this went through and was approved, and a site plan was brought before the city for dry cleaners on this area, I would hope, I don't know if I'll be around, but I would hope that city staff would say, your master plan called for these two commercial uses as the only approved uses. If you desire to change that, then an amendment to the PUD overlay would be required. And that's not unusual. That's a common occurrence within PUD overlays. Market conditions change as is common in general areas. but it allows the city some protections on what actually goes in there commercially. It allows the neighbors, you know, a clear understanding of what is potentially being approved. And it allows the applicant to know exactly what he can do, move forward, or he might need some amendments if he desired.
Is the daycare still allowed without the commercial general designation, though?
Mr. Beato may have me on that one. I will have to look that up and see.
I think the table 5102A says that a child care facility would not be permitted in a residential district. That's what I read.
My suspicion is that, I'm just speaking off the cuff here. My suspicion is that a home-based daycare would be allowed in any residential zone, and you have a definition of what that threshold is. I don't know off the top of my head, but a full-blown for-profit entity that has 50 kids there, you know, on any given day, it would probably not be allowed in a residential zone.
That makes sense.
Mr. Beato,
I'm thinking of the permitted use table. And,
Okay.
you know, yeah, don't, it's my recollection of it. But you're right, there may be further limitations based on size and what have you.
I think what's difficult for me with this particular proposal is, I think we started last March, when we first saw the first one, sometime around March or February last year. And one thing we mentioned was trying to get closer to the designations that R15 calls out. And I know that in a PUD, you can manipulate it to fit what you would like. But when I look through the RS15 regulations in our subdivision regulations and our zoning ordinances, there's just so many things as far as lot size, maximum coverage of a building envelope on, you know, of percentage of the coverage of the lot, minimum setbacks, duplex dwellings not permitted in RS15, things like that just make me feel like we're going further away from the RS15 designation, and then just can kind of throwing that out the door to go to this PUD. It feels more like a low density neighborhood to me, something that would feel better in an urban feel, and we're trying to put in this RS15 designation, in my opinion. And of course, the land use map also says medium density, or I'm sorry, low density, and this is a RS15 would be medium.
while you're contemplating, I would like to clarify my comment, or staff comment number 1. That's a standard comment that you'll find on most all PUD applications, and it's more just an understanding that everybody knows that these preliminary master development plans aren't fully engineered designs, and they're not called to be fully engineered designs. So that's, it's, you know, when you type something out and you have people review it and you review it, it's different than when you actually hear somebody reading it to you. So I wanted to make sure that there was no misunderstanding that is a requirement and this does not meet that requirement. That's not the case. It's just a point of clarification that when those detailed designs are developed and brought before you and staff for approval, that it's still expected that those detailed items, you know, will meet all the criteria that are in your requirements.
When y'all come the last time with the drip fields in, are y'all still planning on putting the tanks in the front yards?
Yes, that's still the intention.
And that's that is a positive revision that has been made, most certainly. The addition of the alley access in the rear of the skinniest lots, if you will, allows for enough area for those tanks to be in the front yards and not have to worry about driveways. And that's we've seen that particular approach in at least one, maybe two other developments that have recently come before you.
Is there any other discussion?
I'd like to point out a couple other things that I see as a positive. I do like seeing the open space at the front of the subdivision, that front Cox Pike. I like seeing that natural buffer there. Obviously, the landscape median and everything. I do like the mixed product and the alleyway product. I just think it breaks the street up, the streetscape looking down. You won't get inundated with garages since everything's on one road. I think ultimately, for me, and just trying to stay with what's in our proposed land use map, Polson Place 2 across the street is an RS20. And I think ultimately, I do really like these changes, but I'm personally leaning to see more of the 2.2 density. My other comment, and it's just I'm unfamiliar with the site as far as the trees and how it's currently. Is this heavily treed? I know from the road it looks somewhat like a pasture, but is it treed? What I'm asking is for the drip field areas, just kind of what the game plan is for that.
Yeah, absolutely. There is tree cover on the site in some locations, as it is. It's a ridge top, and that's kind of where the street runs across. Once we get past this phase with the approval and the ability to move forward into the design work for the drip field, we'll know a little bit more about what their expectation will be, if they'll need to remove some of that tree cover, or if we're going to be allowed to keep it. At any whether it's removed or not, we will be putting the landscape back with what's allowable if we do have to remove some tree cover. So that's just a design element that has to happen at a later date once we kind of get through the initial rezoning and approval so that we can move forward with that.
Thank you.
But yeah, absolutely do intend to keep them if the tree cover that's there, if at all possible. So.
Any other discussion?
Well, I too am encouraged by the changes that have happened, to your point, Mr. Beata. I'm glad, and these are positive things that I'm seeing here. I think I share the same concern, is that I would prefer to see the density closer to 2.2 as opposed to the 2.77, and get it more in line with our 20 as opposed to the 15, or ours 20. I think you're heading in the right direction with it.
Just a point of clarity, R20 is also designated as medium density in your zoning ordinance. So the same Same comment would apply as far as a revision to the proposed land use map if the R20 density was the direction that was chosen. And the R15 density is actually 2.9 units, so that's why the comment says it's most closely is associated with R15. It's actually a little less dense than R15.
Any other discussion? Do you have a motion?
So moved.
A first and a second? All in favor? Opposed?
Nay.
I think we might be better to make a motion for denial of why. Is that?
I'm
finding a
gonna-
factor?
Yeah.
Yeah, to clarify what is.
I'd like to, did we have a unanimous nay on that?
No.
Okay. For the record, I'd like to show that the Planning Commission is turning the item down. They are not willing, we are not willing to rezone this property from low density to medium.
We need to get a vote on that. We need to get a vote on that in form of a motion.
Individual vote.
No, just, the board can vote in general, but you need to have a motion, a second, and to approve your reason for turning it down.
Okay.
Just, again, for clarity, the motion would need to be for a negative recommendation based on whatever reason you choose. Whoever makes the motion, that's what they would choose. Because either way, positive or negative, it's a
Oh, I
recommendation.
get it. I didn't make I just said so moved. I didn't
Right.
say, okay.
Yeah, so that way the applicant has the opportunity to request that even though there was a negative recommendation, they can still request to move forward to the Board of Commissioners for their consideration with the negative recommendation from the Planning Commission. That's a typical process. Every applicant's afforded that option, given if they have a negative recommendation.
Okay, Mr. Beata, would you like to restate your motion?
Okay, I move that we deny this request based on the want to see it as RS20 proposed density.
Second.
Okay, have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 9, reports for discussion and/or information. 9.1, Director of Planning and Codes, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'd just like to report on a couple of grants that are coming to fruition. Our roadscapes grant, possibly we'll be planning, I think they're already putting little flags out there.
I've had people ask what the flags are,
I
so,
got a feeling that's what it is, but
right.
there, we have word from TDOT to move to construction, so we're waiting on them now, so that's something that'll happen probably within the next, I would say it'll be complete in 6 weeks, once they get started, is what I heard the other day in the pre-construction meeting. The next thing is it looks like I've finally got the head work headed in the right direction for the safe routes to school, the sidewalks over on Cumberland. We run into a snag there that had been going on for several months, and so between myself and TDOT and the engineer on that, Zach Dufour, we've got that worked out. So we already had the right-of-way acquisition accomplished, and the utility easements took care of, so that made it a lot easier to move forward with that. So hopefully, you know, up in the spring, we'll have sidewalks on Cumberland. So just wanted to report that. Thank you.
Great.
That's all good news. That's exciting. 9.2, City Engineer, Mr. Owen.
Yes, ma'am. Since you had a short, light agenda, I'll plan on speaking for about 45 minutes. I wouldn't be welcome back, huh? Real quickly, I wanted to follow up last month's work session. Did some compiling of some numbers, and since 2010, you've had 31 rezonings that have gone through BOC vote and approval. 4 in 2016 so far, 2 in 2015, 13 in 2014, 2 in 2013, 5 in 2012, 2 in 2011, and 3 in 2010. The 2014 number stands out as being obviously irregular. There were 7 parcels that were rezoned on Cox Pike and Wiley Circle to Town Center Overlay District undesignated. Those were all continuous parcels, so I think my understanding was that the applicants at that time desired to go in together and potentially market all of their parcels together as a potential kind of commercial center area. The total acreage for those 7 is somewhere around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is maybe 6 or 7 acres. So you had a lot of like 1 acre or half acre parcels within those 7. So that's what kind of stood out to me. Of those 31 total rezonings since 2010, 3 were rezonings to high-density residential. 2 of them, 2 that went to high-density residential were going from a commercial zone to a high-density residential, which is generally considered in the industry a less intensive land use. 1 of them was previously medium-density residential and was rezoned to high-density residential. So you have not had a large amount, despite what it feels like, of applications for high-density residential rezonings. And the 3 that you've had, 2 of them were existing commercial zones. So you've basically haven't had any low-density residential rezoned to high-density residential. You had 10 rezonings to medium-density residential. 2 of those 10 were previously medium density. So 2 of the 10, you're going from medium density to high density. 8 of the 10, you were going from low density to medium density. So there's been a decent number that have gone from low density designation to a medium density designation. 1 of the 31 was actually reduction in density. I know that was maybe one of the items that came up in the workshop was, does anybody come in and just develop what it's zoned for currently? Well, this one actually went 1 step further and reduced their density. They went from a medium density to a low density. That was approximately 14 acres on Chester Road in 2013. And then 17 of the 31 rezonings were going to commercial zones. 16 of the 17 were previously low-density residential zones that were rezoned to commercial. And that includes Town Center Overlay District and Commercial General is the two that were most prevalent. As best I can tell, there have only been 4 rezonings that took place that did not abide since 2012, since the last land use map was adopted. There have been only 4 rezonings that took place that didn't abide by the proposed land use map, or that required a change to the proposed land use map. So again, it might feel like we're not following that plan, but there's only been 4 since the plan was adopted that did not meet that proposed land use map designation. 2 of the 4 are the same property. So really, it's just 3. One of the 3 was the reduction to a low density. I talked about that rezoning that went to low density. The land use map called for that area to be medium density residential. So that was one of the 3 discrepancies in your proposed land use map. The other 2 was the recent one out at the interchange, where you went from high density residential to commercial. Excuse me. The proposed land use map called for commercial, and you rezoned it to high density residential. Again, that's a commonly perceived as a less intense land use. It's different. It's a different land use, but it's commonly thought of as less intense to go from a commercial use to a high density residential. So I thought you might find that interesting. Take it as you wish. I'll be glad to summarize it in an email, or
I would like to
if you
have
were
a
jotting
copy of
that down.
that.
That'd be great. It's a great report.
So you just answered a question there, so if we could get a copy of that, that would be great.
And I may risk stepping out here on a limb, but I don't think Mr. Hall will mind. Mr. Hall does a great job juggling a lot of hats. We all know that.
Yes, he does.
But I don't think it's anyone's intention, Mr. Hall or the Board of Commissioners, for his current status as covering for Planning and Codes Director to be a permanent situation. I would not personally recommend that to be the case. This type of aggregate information is absolutely something that a full-time planning and codes director should and can provide and do on a regular basis. So I'm just throwing that out there, that's this is just one aspect that could be done of items, of tasks that individual could perform and be a great asset to the Planning Commission, to Mr. Hall, and to the city as a whole. So that's all I've got.
Thank you. 9.3, City Attorney, Mr. Cantrell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've only got one thing, and I received this at the office late as I came out tonight, and I asked Ms. Brandy to run some copies, and I think it was distributed to everyone. It was distributed to everyone who's a TMA member regarding the House Local Government Subcommittee. There is a bill out there, House Bill 775, that everyone thought went away last spring. Well, it's been revived, and what it, in a nutshell, does, it's a lot longer than this, but what it in a nutshell does is changes zoning for cities and counties as we know it. Goes very similar to the annexation type thing. If this bill passes, any private property that's rezoned or any zoning ordinance that's put into place without written consent of the private property owner, will have no application to that particular piece of property. In a lot of instances, the people come in and ask that it be rezoned, but as cities grow, they sometimes to get their land use map and get their plan for the future in place, they will rezone blocks of property. Now, that don't mean they go out there and take it, and if you rezone it from residential to commercial, that they go out and take the property and that would, you'd have to pay for it and change it to instant commercial, but a lot of that is done for future planning. But listed on that information that was distributed to you is the email address and telephone number of all the committee's members of the local government subcommittee. And if you have any feelings about whether private property should have to have written permission before the city can rezone it, then I would urge you to make that known to one of these members or all of these members. It'd be nice to do all of them, but make it known to them by tomorrow before 1:30, because they're going to take up the bill tomorrow. Just wanted to let you know that, didn't want to slide by. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. 9.4, City Manager, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Ron Rowe has something here, and I'm going to let him take my time for right now. He'd like to talk to y'all about something.
Mr. Rowe?
Good evening. I've obtained a DVD presentation. It's about an hour long, and it's in regards to parkland dedication. And it's put on by a Dr. John Crompton, who back in December of 2013, I know the mayor and Mr. Hall went to the mayor's breakfast, and he put a presentation on there about parks and recreation. I tried to obtain that for the Park Commission, but it wasn't available. But this one on park dedication is very good. He gave this presentation to the city of Franklin staff and BOC, their aldermen. And my recommendation would be is to use this for one of your hours of training before one of the meetings. He explains all about the subdivisions, park dedications, what each house would contribute towards parks and recreation, and it's pretty informing. So I just would, if you'll put that on your thinking caps on that and put that on your agenda for the future, I think you won't regret it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we add that to the next meeting? You said it's an hour?
Yeah, 58 minutes.
To view it prior to the next meeting? Madam Chairman?
Is everybody good with that? 1 hour before the next meeting, start at 6 o'clock
Works for me.
in April? Okay.
Sounds good.
You won't regret it. This guy's a great speaker. He'll keep you interested.
Number 10, communication from the Planning Commission members. Mr. Mangrum?
I have nothing tonight.
Commissioner Sutton?
Nothing tonight.
Mr. Butler?
Nothing tonight.
Mr. Beata?
I've got a question. Several months back, we had a lot of discussion about the Water Authority and their approach with the city sewer and everything. But the one thing I remember was that they were supposed to be doing a review report for the state, and I didn't know if, I just had never heard anything beyond that. I didn't know. Mr. Hall?
Yes, Matt, they are under a study right now.
Okay.
The engineering firm, Hazen and Sawyer, is doing that study. It just so happens that one of the lead engineers on that used to be with TDOT.
Okay.
Miss Sal Qualls, that we dealt with many years ago. And at one of the last reports that she had given at the Water Authority board meeting was that it's looking more like a land application situation.
Okay.
For our plant, which the goal behind this is TDEC has asked for this study. to increase our flow at that particular plant from a 500,000 gallon capacity to 1,500,000 gallon capacity. If that happens, that'll be great news. It won't, I don't think it'll solve our 20-year outlook, but I think it would solve our next 5 to 7 year outlook, which would help a lot of the local developers on smaller developments. I think they're still going to push more for the on-site system for the larger developments, but this would really help the smaller developments. Once this study is completed, then it will go to TDEC for their approval. And then once TDEC does the approval phase on that, then it'll go to for the renovation of the plant that it will take to move forward with that. We're hoping that that occurs within the year. We're not certain that that'll that coverage will be happening in a shorter time, but it sure would be nice, because that's the major problem that we have right now in Fairview is the water and sewer.
Has Water Authority hinted about how those would be allocated, or you know, as far as their parameters, have they hit, you know, if you're this close, you know, anything like that? Has that been discussed, or it's just very preliminary?
They haven't hinted at that. I'm sure they'll have a pro rata way they go about that at that time.
The last time we were there and met, and we asked, Mr. Hall asked about getting copies of the report and the status on it. We were just told that we wouldn't get it till they were through with it.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Hall.
You're welcome.
Is that all?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. That's all.
Okay. Didn't want to cut you off.
Thank you.
Mr. Dowdy?
I have nothing further.
Mr. Mitchell?
Nothing tonight, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Lohman?
Just a couple things. I wanted to thank Ron Rowe for his recommendations for the American Planning Association event. It's with their winter retreat. I actually attended that on Friday and was pretty informative. They had a good class on ethics, and then event venues in rural areas. I have a problem with that word for some reason. And temporary rentals. Very good. I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. I got a lot out of that. And also for the educational stuff you referenced tonight. And Will, thanks to you for the rezoning report. That was pretty informative, because I was really, quite frankly, surprised. I mean, it feels like we do a lot more than what the numbers show. So I appreciate you doing that as well. That's all I have, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I as well would like to thank Mr. Owen for putting the report together for us. I think it is a good tool for us to use if we're approached about that. You know, we can have that in front of us so that we can, you know, show what's being done with the land use and the rezoning. I'd like to thank Ms. Johnson for sitting in and recording for us tonight. And thank Ron for bringing to us all the different, you know, things that we can get our credits that we need to, and information on different things that help us make our decisions for our community. I'd like to thank all the commissioners and the staff for the hard work that they do to put in to make our decisions. And also, I just wanted to let everybody know, it's really important when we have items come before us, and I know that, you know, everyone does this, but just to kind of reiterate, we need to be going out to those sites and checking them out before we make our decisions, and getting as much information as we can so that we can make good decisions each night. Thank you to Mr. Hall. He's wearing several hats right now, and he's working really hard, and he loves his community, and I know that we all support everything that he's doing. And the last thing I just want to say, we have some wonderful new businesses out here, and before you leave and shop in another town, another community, just make sure that it's not available in our own Fairview community so that we can support our community and make our community stronger. That's all I have to say. We're adjourned. Thank you.